Today on Across the Fence, local food from your nearby farmer. You'll see and learn what Vermont growers are doing to ensure the food you buy is safe and fresh. Good afternoon and thanks for joining us. I'm Judy Simpson. Every farmer's goal is to raise the freshest food possible. Getting that food from the farm to the plate implies farmers follow GAPS, or good agricultural processes. From planning and planting to harvesting and processing, GAPS ensure food safety. How food is processed goes hand in hand with where wash, pack, and storage stations fit on the farm. To talk about food safety on farms, I'm joined by Ginger Nickerson. She's the Produce Safety and GAPS Coordinator with University of Vermont Extension Center for Sustainable Agriculture. Welcome to you. What are some of the basic GAPS, or good agricultural practices, that farms have to follow?
So good agricultural practices are really about hygiene and sanitation, and it's basic common sense. And the nice thing is that most Vermont produce operations are already doing them. They're really simple things like cleaning the containers that you're putting the produce in, having potable water on hand for processing the produce, and keeping the crops at the appropriate temperatures.
And so many of the foodborne illness outbreaks that we hear about on the news occur in industrialized farming. And what about smaller, medium-sized operations like the ones that we have in the Northeast?
So it's important to remember that the pathogens that make people sick when they're associated with fresh produce, the viruses and bacteria, they're every place in the environment. They don't discriminate in terms of whether a farm is a small farm or a large farm. The reason why we hear about outbreaks associated with industrial farms is because they're distributing their product to much larger populations. So statistically, it's going to crop up. For example, when we had the E. coli and spinach outbreak back in 2006, those farms that were distributing that spinach were distributing it to 26 different states, which is a much larger area than most of the farmers in Vermont are distributing to.
Right. Well, how does the design and layout of the space where the food is washed and stored impact food safety?
So the kinds of things that you're going to be thinking about, think about your kitchen, and it's exactly the same, only, you know, it's a business. But you're going to be thinking about flow. Are things moving in one direction from product that has soil on it to after it's been cleaned, and you're not doubling back, so you're reducing that chance for cross-contamination? How cleanable is your area? Are the contact surfaces where the product's going to be resting, are those cleanable surfaces? Is anything potentially dropping from overhead? And also you want to be thinking about the efficiency, organization, and ergonomics. So are things well organized, which will make them a lot easier to clean? And is the design efficient so that you're reducing the number of steps and stress on workers?
I know, Ginger, you and UVM Extension produced a video series in partnership with the Vermont Department of Agriculture and the United States Department of Agriculture's Risk Management Agency to show that there's a pack shed to fit every farm.
My name is Ansel Ploog. I run Flywheel Farm with my partner, Justin Cody. We farm about 2 acres in central Vermont. This is our second year farming in this location. And we farm 70% of our stuff goes wholesale in restaurants, and about 30% is retail through our farm stand. We farm on leased land. We have a rolling 5-year lease, so we have a little bit of security with that. So this structure is an 8x8 wood shed that's supposed to fit 4 cords of wood. And it's just a very simple pole barn structure. We thought, well, that looked like something we could build, not having a lot of experience building.
This is not on a foundation, so it's just in the ground. The posts go into the ground 2 or 3 feet, every post, and then Where the floor is, there are some blocks, like cinder blocks, like patio blocks set down. Like maybe under this 8x8 section, there might be 9 of them, 6 or 9 of them under there.
This is a very greens focused pack shed. There's no room for a barrel washer in here. We process all of our roots basically outside. We don't do a lot of roots or potatoes. If you're a farmer and you know, like you want to do carrots, you would have a very different setup. We wanted to make sure we did the triple rinse, and we wanted enough sinks so that we could have multiple things washing at a time if we weren't needing to triple rinse them. And it just ended up working really well to have these Home Depot sinks, these laundry sinks. We wanted it to be uniform and easy, and we needed a place to store packaging materials, a place to drain greens, a place for our salad spinner, and a place to box things. And that's kind of the concept we started last year with. And then we added a walk-in cooler to it. So there's an outdoor sink for washing tools, for washing hands. These are only for produce. I really wanted to create a flow where clean produce wasn't going back over dirty produce. So that was really hard to do in a square where we were kind of coming in over here and leaving over here. So that took a bit of work to come up with this horseshoe shape. But that was really important. And that's not just a food safety thing, that's also an efficiency thing. Like everybody knows which way the produce is going.
So we built it to this size because we're not investing a lot in infrastructure on our leased land. We had discussed the possibility of moving it somewhere else in the future, it being small enough. It's unlikely that we'll do that. The cost, it cost, maybe a couple between $2,000 and $3,000 to put it all together, which seems like a lot of money at the time. But one of the things we value most is our ability to adapt. So we don't have like a plan that goes any further than 5 years out. So when we talk to like debt counselors and people about borrowing money, they really advocated that we just put something together, like small and cheap. And it may not suit where we are in 5 years, but it's not going to dictate what we are. It's a small investment. Yeah, it works great.
Well, so these farmers want to stay small. Are there advantages to food safety in staying small?
Well, really, the pros and cons aren't so much associated with size, and I think that's one of the nice things that the Flywheel video demonstrates, that good agricultural practices can be followed regardless of whether you're large or small. Mm-hmm. It really comes down, again, thinking about your kitchen and your housekeeping practices to the materials and what you're doing, your practices. You can have a state-of-the-art kitchen, and if you're not cleaning it on a regular basis, that's not going to help you. And you can have a small space using what you have, and if you're following good practices, then you're in good shape.
Well, on the other end of the spectrum from Flywheel Farm is Jericho Settlers Farm, and one lesson that these farmers learned is that big isn't always big enough.
My wife Krista Alexander and I run Jericho Settlers Farm. Started out really small, quarter-acre garden, sold produce out in front of the house on a table by the side of the road, and that was our market. We basically have an old dairy barn, Gambrel dairy barn, which was probably, I think it was built in the 1930s. So basically no insulation barn, like an old cow barn. Various sections of concrete that would all busted up, and dirt floor. Very cold in the wintertime because there's, like I said, there's no insulation. You could see right through the barn boards to the outside. We insulated it, added plywood or dairy board that was washable, painted the ceilings, added lights, brightened the place up so we could see what we're doing. Initially we had some gravel in there just so we could walk around. We weren't on dirt. And then we poured concrete and had drainage to drain the water in that facility. The most important thing was doing the concrete floor and the drainage, because the concrete allowed us then to move items around with a hand truck and move it pretty easily. Anyone could move quite a bit of weight on a hand truck or a cart as opposed to doing it by themselves. So it basically reduced multiple trips. So in matters of efficiency and ease on your body, concrete was a big factor for us. We made those changes just for ease of use for us and our employees. And then as the food safety became more prevalent in our thoughts, it's like, okay, what can we do next? In 2011, we started building that new add-on to the barn, which is roughly 20 wide by 43 long. And like I said, half of that was cooler and half of that was loading dock space. So when we added the addition, we started picking up more stainless steel sinks and tables, and we added the washable dairy board in there, more lighting, just more of a safe environment for working and for food safety. And at the time we thought it was big enough, but once we started adding in a barrel washer, we lost some of that space. Once we started adding in a sink or a Rubbermaid tank to wash greens, we lost some more space. Now add to that, bringing in your totes or crates of produce to get them off of the truck. Then you've got it full, and then add to that, okay, we got to have people working in there. It got small really quick, and then at that point it's like, okay, we need to add again just for our sanity and workflow. So if we had something a little bit bigger and we're more efficient, these days will get shorter, the crew morale will improve. I looked at other barns, looked at a lot of stuff online, talked to people about what we might want to do. And I was always advocating for a little bit bigger, for something to work with in the future. And so part of that was, width, length, something we could grow into. Basically that barn is 45 by 85, 18 feet high ceiling. And about half of that space is an open area where we have our wash pack equipment. So barrel washers, brush washers, soak tanks, stainless steel tables, and a lot of those things we have on wheels, or we're transitioning to put them on wheels. Our barrel washer we haven't got it on wheels yet, but it's going to go on wheels. Soak tank we got on wheels, pallet jacks, even our garbage can is on wheels. So we can move them around and basically reconfigure our space as we need to. And so half of that is open, and the other half is really cooler space. Probably the first thing to think about if you're going to expand, this is not the answer you want to hear, but why are you expanding? Is it because there's a market out there that hasn't been tapped and you want to go after it? Or are you just expanding because you're working in too tight of a spot? You have to really figure out why you want to expand, because that'll probably drive how big you expand into and how fast you expand into something. But once you make that decision, I guess my first advice would be build bigger than you think you're going to need within reason. Obviously you can't build something so huge you run out of money that all you have is a shell and you got nothing to put in it. We found every time we've expanded a little bit, it's like within a year or two we've outgrown it. So it's like, let's build something that we can grow into within 5 to 10 years. And how big and the size, the height, the width, the footprint, what that looks like is kind of a little bit nebulous at first. But visiting other farms that have gone through that process is very helpful. Visiting other people's evolution of how they've evolved from their old dairy barn to a new facility, what size they've used, what machinery they use, how they move product around. Going to those farms and actually seeing that process as it's evolved for them is very helpful. Get you thinking about what might work for you on your farm.
So now there's actually a third video too that has been produced.
Yes, I'm glad you mentioned that. There's a third video that tells the story about how Howard and Lisa Prusek of High Meadows Farm in Westminster West took an old dairy barn that was a cold, dark space and turned it into a beautiful, warm, dry, light space that anybody would want to be in the wintertime.
And so here's a link to where people can go to see those videos.
Yes, you can go to gouvm.edu/packshed, or you can just Google Packshed Video UVM and find all 3 of the videos.
Okay, good information. Thanks a lot for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
That's our program for today. I'm Judy Simpson. We'll see you again next time on Across the Fence.